morning, beloved. It's 8 o'clock. It's a drippy day, and I'm here to say I love you and to congratulate you. It's been a week. You've been able to get through a week in which everything changed in a heartbeat, and you had to adjust and adapt and come up with all sorts of creative solutions for how to live your life and how to take care of others and how to navigate all sorts of uncertainty and unexpected challenges and frustrations and maybe anxieties. So I'm just giving a quick word to encourage you with hope. Everybody had to get creative in the last week, and now we have another week before us, and you may wonder, could I do this again? And yet I'm just here to remind you, you made it last week, you can do it this week. We're all having to be creative. This came across my desk a couple days ago that I thought was pretty funny. What do you do when what you're very passionate about and what you have great aptitude for no longer has a context in which you to practice that sort of thing? So here's what one sportscaster did in a world in which there is no sports. So check this out.
Well, you join me here live at Tooting Common, and this the final of the Two Lonely Blokes Apart contest, and whoa, that was absolutely terrible. That's what we've come to expect really from these two. They've been here for some time. A few runners in the distance, not keeping enough distance frankly, and these two are utterly useless. Looking forward to the third, fourth place playoff later.
You join us live here on Tooting Common once again. Carla the Cavapoo coming along very nicely on the mundane walk. And oh my goodness, who's this? Oh, it's Colin. He's broken free. Bless you. He's going to be disqualified. Carla, she seems quite happy though. 5.8s across the board. Lovely. So this, the international 4x4 pushchair formation final. And we've got the up front pair, of course, are Johansson and Eriksson from Sweden, and they're in with the Brits here in Smith and Black, and they're doing particularly well of staying quite close with them around this very delicate bend. Of course, they're pretty familiar with this course, and that's what saw them become European champions just a few months ago. Great to see them back. Crossroad dash, light turns to red. We wait for the beats. There they are now then. JD Sportsman, he's got a decent start. Leggings on the outside. Oh, JD Sportsman's been distracted over the shoulder, and Leggings is going to get there. Oh, she does it again. 3 titles in 3 days, off past Vegas Gold for the lap of honour. Victorious.
Brilliant. How do you engage that thing that's so part of you that you can't quite give up? You go out and find places in which to use it, and hopefully to everyone's benefit and maybe a little bit of laughter. It's a time to try to find ways to make people laugh in a serious situation in which doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. So anyway, you've done that, and you've navigated a week, and now you can face this week ahead with the knowledge that you've done it once, it can happen again. Everything has changed in a heartbeat. And I want just to encourage you with the possibility that can happen again, but also to encourage you with the reality that there's a lot of things that have not changed. The birds, even on a rainy day like this, are still singing. Things are blossoming, whether in your garden or in your front bed or on your walk. Spring still happened. Despite everything else being canceled, spring was not canceled, and those are all good things. It's allowed us all to kind of reflect and realize that there's all sorts of things that, despite all the change, there's a lot of things that haven't changed, and to remind us that there is something that hasn't changed, and that is that the Lord is present to His creation and is sovereign over it, even if we're at a loss to know how He's going to be sovereign over a lot of things that now present for us a greater degree of uncertainty. In my family over the weekend, sort of these things kind of happened that kind of reminded me that stuff doesn't change, even when a lot of things change. All sorts of opportunities to kind of do things that you haven't done before, and to be goofy and to try other things, and to hang out in your backyard and go on walks and work in your garden or make something to attract bees into your backyard. I'm not sure that's a great idea, but that's just kind of what we did over our weekend, and this unfortunately does not reflect what the one moment when one child tried to electrocute another child with our electric fence that goes around our chicken coop. So, it's a curated life, and on social media you just kind of put forth your best foot forward. And so I know everything has changed for you, and we have to kind of reset our world in a lot of ways, and that's why I am here to say that in my world, in which I'm accustomed to getting together with you on a regular basis and even talking with you on a Sunday morning, I can't even do this with you. I can't even do this with you on a Sunday now because we're at a distance, and we can't know when in the foreseeable future we'll be able to do that again. So I am here not only to encourage you, but to ask you to do something that we might be able to continue in our relationship between each other, and that is this. Let me tell you a story. A guy named Phil Moore, who I think is from England, he posted a great story last week, and if you want to see that story or that post, I'll send you the email or the link. But he tells the story about this missionary to China whose name was James Fraser back in the first half of the 20th century. And James Fraser ministered to people in a region about a few hundred miles to the west of what is now Wuhan. And he ministered to people down in the lowlands of his region, and then he would journey to the top and the mountainous regions of that area, and he would minister to people up there, and he planted a church, and he would disciple them. Well, it would be that such the weather in the wintertime, it would take 5 days for him to go minister to the people up in the highlands, up in the mountains. He would have to take 2 days to travel, gather them for a day, and do for them what he could, and then it would take him 2 days to come back down. And it was a pretty frequent occurrence for him that he would be on his way up that 5-day trek, and halfway through realize that the roads were impassable, and so he couldn't get to where he wanted to go. And so he'd become immediately and pretty strenuously frustrated because he thought, you know what I'm supposed to do? You called me to be up here, and now I can't get up here. What am I supposed to do? So he goes back down to the mountain, and he kind of resets and tries to come up with a creative solution to his predicament. And so he tried an experiment. Rather than spending the typical 5 days of going up, staying, coming back during the winter times, it was his intention and his decision to use that time only to pray for the people at the top of the mountain. And only or just pray may sound like we put prayer in sort of second tier terms of activity and what we do when it comes to living before God and trying to live for his own name. But that's what he did. He just used those 5 days to pray for the people rather than try to make the trek and go be with them. Well, the winter ends, the spring comes upon them, the thaw happens, he's able to go because the roads are now passable, and he gets to the top and he's wondering to himself, well, they have all kind of said, who are you? James who? Why am I listening to you? Well, they all kind of disseminated and dispersed and given no more thought to what he had already told them. And it turned out, upon discovery, that they had actually matured, that his prayers, a consequence of his prayers is that they had kind of demonstrated a certain growth that had nothing to do with his presence, that he didn't have to micromanage whatever they were doing, but they were able to mature in faith and grow into what it meant to understand this Jesus that he had come to say to them. So it just confirmed to him that prayer matters, and that he didn't have to do something in spite of prayer or in the place of prayer, but actually let prayer become more prominent in what he did in terms of ministry. So I am kind of like, as many of you are, kind of like that sportscaster who finds himself wanting to fulfill his vocation, but is trying to find creative ways to do that. And so I'm asking you to help me do that by saying this, doing this. Let me put these up here. There are a lot of people in our church, and if you've ever been in between services on Sunday mornings, that are part of a prayer team. It's led by Amanda McClam and Dave Bachmiller. And they gather Sundays, and if you want any of them to pray for any of you, you send it to that top email address, prayforthisgmr@gmail.com. And that way you can put a lot of eyes on whatever you want to be prayed for, and they'll do it, whether it's on a Sunday morning or at other times. They'll be aware of that. If you want me to pray for you, that's how you get in touch with me, plaffertygmr@gmail.com. I would be honored to use the extra time that I have that I am not able to use in being able to sit with you and have coffee with you and talk with you to pray for you. So I'm not any more special than anybody on that prayer team. My prayers aren't any more effective than theirs. But if you want several eyes on your prayers, send it to that top email address. If you'd like me to pray for you, then send it to me, because I'd like to use this time in effective ways, I hope, just by taking the time to know you, to speak with you if you want to talk about it, but also to pray for you if I can. So that's my request to you. And in a season like this, so much is happening so quickly, and we look at a bunch of charts and we study a bunch of statistics, and with every new news cycle there's new information and new directives, and in the crush of all that information and having to take up all sorts of new responsibilities and new rhythms and new protocols, it is really easy and understandable if prayer starts to feel like it's a last-ditch effort, that's only a mark of desperation, that prayer becomes substandard and unnecessary. And that's why I might say, by way of an object lesson, on one of our walks this week, our budding biologist found this along the walk. Let me get it up close there. Our budding biologist that hopefully maybe one day wants to be an entomologist was convinced that this was bark that had been hollowed out by ants. And ants were carving their way in to create a little shelter for themselves. And they do an excellent job of it, if you can see that. It's all, nicely polished almost, and plenty of room for the whole family and the extended family, and that's what they do. And I might show that to you as a picture of what I think prayer can be thought of in a season like this. Yes, it's by way of effective work. The psalmist says in Psalm 91, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." They're looking for a shelter. They carve it out through their own ingenuity and diligence. And I would say that prayer, if you want to think of it in a certain way, is your attempt to dwell in the shelter of the Most High by running for refuge. That's what prayer is, among other things. And that's why I'm inviting you to let me or the prayer team pray for you. Or for you to go to one of your elders or to somebody else that you love and adore and trust. It doesn't have to be any of us, but it should be someone. So think of prayer in that way. The text that I've shared with the staff and the session and others last week is the text in 2 Corinthians 1, when Paul is very frank about his own affliction, him and his team and wherever they would go, and that they had plenty of affliction to go around, but in that affliction they received comfort, and yet they were not the final destination of God's comfort that came to them. That comfort came to them, but then that comfort was able to be moved on towards others who found themselves in a similar form of affliction, whatever that affliction might be. And in that text there in 2 Corinthians 1, he ends that little passage by saying to those whom he had reminded of God's comfort, he says, "You must also help us by prayer, so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us through the prayers of many." Here's someone who knew all about affliction, who knew all about facing both ridicule and being harangued and being beaten and having to flee in the night and all sorts of things that might come at him and want to steal his hope and his joy, and who might, in that circumstance, might think that prayer was sort of unnecessary. You just got to find the right protocol and the right rhythm and the right survival method. And instead, he's pretty much saying prayer is as much front and center to his way of navigating these uncertain times as it would be for anybody. So you take refuge because he calls us to, and because even those who have gone through all sorts of affliction like Paul had, that's what they do. So I'm just inviting you to do that. I'd love to know how I could pray for you. Speaking of prayer, last week we did this together. Several of us got together it was last Thursday night, and we had a brief liturgy, and then we provided some time for us to pray for any number of things. And we enjoyed that, and we learned a lot about praying in community online through a Zoom call, and we'd like to do that again. So be on the lookout. We'll share with you the information on stuff like that, but we'd love for you to come, and we'll give you more warning than I did last week of just several hours. We'll give you a few days to get prepared for that. But we did it. It was to good effect, and everybody who came was glad that they did. So that's going to happen soon. We know that you're going through a lot of not only transition but uncertainty. We know that there's many in our midst who are now facing either unemployment all of a sudden, or imminent unemployment, or the specter of unemployment. And I might just pass along to you something I've become made aware of in recent days, and that's how the governor has signed some recent executive orders that expands the ability for people who now find themselves unemployed to get unemployment benefits. And that document is now available online. It gives you all the details. If you're trying to seek out what you do, if you find yourself in the midst of an unemployment situation, that's one way to seek assistance. we don't know. We'd love to hear from you if you find yourself in that predicament. We'd like to know what's going on in your life. We know that that's now the reality for a lot more people than ever they imagined they would. There is an online application process, I'm told, and from the scuttlebutt I've heard on the Facebook pages that speak to this issue, that it may require you a little bit of patience to kind of get through and get your application submitted. So that's just something that's out there. We know that you're facing it in a big way really fast, and so we just wanted to pass that along to you, as well as to remind you that if you are in need of support, encouragement, we know that there's a lot of you that are in a particular high-risk category that might find yourself unable to seek and secure the things that you ordinarily would in the situation, and that's why we've reminded you of the way to get in touch with us, to either seek help or to offer yourself as one who might give help. And that's on our website. So we hope that you will do that, that we might be of help to you, that we might be a family unto one another. That's all I've got this morning. I want you to know that we're all planning for you and praying for you, and that we love you. And if you will tell us how we can be of help to you, we're going to do our level best to be that. We also pray that you might see in this very unique moment an opportunity to be of assistance to people that you may have never met before. And so to act with great courage, but also with great prudence. And we know that that's the tricky thing right now. So that's us. I hope that you would be encouraged in the week that you had ahead of you, and we'll stay in touch with any number of things. We love you. We'll talk to you later.